Good morning. Oh, man. Good morning. There we go. I want to start this morning with the story of when my then 3-year-old, my oldest daughter, got in maybe the most trouble that she has got in. So I was just sitting in the room minding my own business, and then I hear bloody murder screaming from the other room. I run in. My 2 daughters are there, the 3-year-old and the 1 or 2-year-old, whatever she was. And the younger daughter has big white and red bite marks on her arm. And so I turned to Theo, the older daughter, and said, "Did you bite your sister?" And she thought about it for a little bit, and she said, "No." And I said, "Theo, did you bite your sister?" And she said, "No." I said, "Okay, who bit your sister?" "I don't know." Okay, well, let's do the math on this. I know it wasn't Mom, pretty sure. Wasn't me. I was sitting over there. I've got an alibi. Your baby sister is too small to even crawl around. So, Theo, who bit your sister? "I don't know." Was it a feral child that snuck in the house? Do we need to get the FBI in here to do a DNA test? Was it like a very bitey poltergeist? Theo, who bit your sister? And finally, after several minutes of this kind of thing, she confessed. The mystery was solved. She had, in fact, bitten her sister, and she was lying about it. And so I had to mete out some discipline. Because I don't know about your houses, but in our house, those are about the 2 worst things you could possibly do is bite somebody and then lie to your parents. So we took care of that. And then when everything was done, I was talking to Theo about it. I was like, "Theo, just be honest next time. Just, even if you did something bad, you can be honest about it, and it will be much better for you. And actually, before you even do the bad thing, just come and be honest about the fact that your sister was annoying you." I guess MJ had been throwing toys or something, and so that's why she deserved to be bitten, I guess. So just come tell me next time, and then I'll be dealing with MJ instead of dealing with you. And Theo thought about that for a second, and then her face lit up, and she said, "Oh yeah, Dad, you're right. This is, I swear, exactly what she said. "Next time, I'll tell you, and then MJ will get the spanking." "Good idea, Dad. Good idea." I'm like, well, I'm glad we brainstormed this one together. The truth shall set you free, my daughter. The truth shall set you free. So, we're talking about truth and lies today. We are resuming our study of the 10 Commandments, and we are coming to the 9th commandment, which you may know as thou shalt not lie is what a lot of people would say, but you see right there it says, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. Now, why does it put it that way? Well, as we've seen going through the 10 Commandments, oftentimes what they do is they take kind of the most extreme, destructive, worst-case example type scenario, and they use that for the commandment, and then from that we are supposed to derive a broad moral principle. So, for example, the 6th commandment is you shall not murder. And that is the most extreme way that you can violate that commandment. But from that, we derive a basic moral principle, which is that life is sacred. Life is good. We are supposed to protect it. We are supposed to honor it. Jesus says, don't even grumble against your brother. Don't insult him. Don't hate him in your heart. So there's all this moral stuff that's bound up in the extreme example of don't murder. It's not just, don't put an axe in somebody's back. Similarly, the 7th commandment, thou shalt not commit adultery, right? Same thing. That's the most extreme destructive version, but from that we derive a general principle, which is that marriage is sacred, that it's between a man and a woman, that sex belongs there and nowhere else, and anything that violates that is wrong. Even things that are smaller or different than pure adultery, right? So we have that going on in this commandment, which is written again, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. So what is it actually to bear false witness? It's a legal term. It means to give false testimony, to commit perjury, to go into court and be part of a legal situation and have to give testimony and to give it falsely, to say, yeah, I saw Frank murder Bob, when actually you didn't see Frank murder Bob. And if you think about the Bible times, if you think about back then, when they tried to figure out things legally, when in their judicial system, in their law, what they didn't have was, DNA, blood splatter analysis, CSI Jerusalem, CSI Bethlehem. You didn't have any of the surveillance footage to study. No. You were just basically conducting everything based on oral testimony. And so a couple of witnesses, if they lied, could see someone executed. We actually have examples of this in the Bible. In 1 Kings 21, I think it is, you have the story of Ahab. Some of you probably remember this story, King Ahab and the vineyard of Naboth. Ahab really wants this vineyard that this dude has, and the dude won't sell it to him. And so Ahab is pouting, and then evil Queen Jezebel comes in and is like, what's wrong? And he's like, well, this guy Naboth won't sell me his vineyard. And Jezebel says, don't worry, I'll take care of it. And then she goes and essentially gets two, it says worthless men, two false witnesses, to stand up in front of everybody and accuse Naboth of something that he didn't do. They say, you cursed God and cursed the king. And so two men accuse him, and then he's taken out and he's executed. And then they get the vineyard. And of course, God judges Ahab and Jezebel, and their stories don't end well. But for the purposes of what we're talking about today, that's the most extreme example you could think of bearing false testimony. Somebody dies because somebody lies, right? And so that's actually what we're talking about here. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. Now, what is the broader principle, the big moral point that we're supposed to take from that? Don't lie. Tell the truth. I think that's the most obvious one, and that's why most people know this as the don't lie commandment. But actually, I think we could go even broader than that. I mean, the most broad that we could go is we could say, don't destroy with your mouth. Don't cause destruction with your words. The ninth commandment, in its broadest sense, is just about, do your words bring life or do they bring death? They should not bring death. They should bring life. We should speak life. Now, what do I mean by speak life? I grew up in kind of a Pentecostal type situation when I was very young. And so people would speak life by saying, Brother Nathan, I want your business to succeed. And so I'm speaking that. I'm putting that word out there that your business is going to succeed. And now that's out there. And God will honor that because I spoke it with my words. The words are powerful. This is how people would talk, right? My dad, at a certain point when I was very young, decided he wanted to introduce more grace into our home. And so what he would do is he would randomly shout the word grace just in the middle of stuff. I remember one time, like 6 o'clock in the morning, we're all just asleep, and my dad walks down the hallway, grace! And I don't know, it didn't seem to bring a lot of grace and peace into our house in that exact moment. It was weird. So is that what I'm talking about when I say speak life? Is it like, kind of cosmic affirmations that lead to this great... No. What do I mean by speak life? Well, let me read a few verses, okay? There's a few other Bible verses. Proverbs 10 says, the mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life, but the mouth of the wicked conceals violence. Proverbs 16:24 says, "Gracious words are like a honeycomb, sweetness to the soul and health to the body." Proverbs 18:11 says, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruits." Ephesians 4:29 says, "Let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only such as is good for building up as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear." So, what we do with our mouths, the things that we say, are powerful. Your words can cause, my words can cause death, destruction, disease, discouragement, bad things, or on the flip side, they can cause happiness, joy, encouragement, life. And so, all throughout the scriptures, we're told to guard our tongues. And so obeying this commandment in its broader sense just means doing all the good things with your mouth, praising, exhorting, loving people with your words. Disobeying it looks like lying, yes, but also slandering, gossiping, being crude, being cynical, backbiting, all of which has lies tied in with it, right? But before we talk specifically about lying, which I do want to spend some time talking about, I want to kind of speed run through 4 other ways that we destroy with our tongues. So 4 ways we destroy with our tongues. Number 1, slander and gossip. Proverbs 16:28 says, "A perverse person stirs up conflict, and a gossip separates close friends." So let's define our terms. When you slander someone, you say something in order to harm their good name, in order to destroy their reputation. You say, "Hey, Bob is a big dumb jerk." You just slandered Bob. And unless Bob is literally and provably a big dumb jerk, you just slandered Bob. Gossip is when you share something that causes harm to Bob's good name or good reputation. "Hey, did you hear the story about the time that Bob was a big dumb jerk?" These are bad things to do. These are satanic things to do, actually. Satan is called the accuser of the brethren. If you talk about somebody's faults or somebody's problems or somebody's sins to someone who isn't part of the solution or isn't in a position to know about it, then even if it's true, even if it's juicy, even if it's really interesting, you are being satanic. You are gossiping. You are slandering. And this goes for speaking it. It also goes for listening to it. You should not listen to somebody slander. You should not listen to somebody gossip. And it happens to us all the time. People will slander our friends. People will slander our fellow family members. People will slander our church. People will slander our pastors. This happens. And you don't want to be the trash can that they dump in, right? If someone starts tearing down a person or a church or a ministry or someone that you know, and you're not in a position to actually be the one who helps fix it or know the whole story, then your responsibility before God is to shut it down. Why are you telling me this? I don't need to know this. If it's about the church, then say, "Let's go talk to the pastor right now." Watch how fast the conversation ends. You don't need to be Satan's megaphone, right? So slander and gossip, whether it's technically true or not, no good, very bad, don't do. Number 2, way that we destroy with our tongues: complaining, nagging, backbiting. Philippians 2:14 says, "Do all things without grumbling or disputing." Proverbs 21:19 says, "It is better to live in a desert than with a quarrelsome and nagging wife." Constant fault finding is not a cute personality quirk. It's not discernment. It's just poison. It's just a way that we poison people with our tongues when we complain all the time. You don't want to be that parent. You don't want to be that dad. You don't want to be that mom. You don't want to be that wife who's just always complaining, always nagging, always lying about who God is. You'll see with all of these, as I said, that there's a lie inherent in them. If your speech and everything that you say and everything that you assert sort of has as the fundamental premise behind it that God isn't for you, that he's not going to take care of you, and so therefore you just need to complain, then you're no better than the Israelites when they came out of Egypt and were in the desert and God had done all these wonderful miracles, and then they complained like, did you bring us out here to die? And God, ultimately they were brought out there to die as punishment for their complaining. So, number 1, slander. Number 2, complaining. Number 3, flattery. A lying tongue hates its victims, and a flattering mouth works ruin, says Proverbs 26. Now, I am so glad to serve a church that would never give itself to flattery. See what I did there? Flattery is manipulation. It's just manipulation, but it's manipulation wrapped up in a smile. It's manipulation disguised as encouragement. If you find yourself telling someone something good, and it's not because they actually need to know that, or it's not to actually, for them, to offer them encouragement, to help them, but it's because you want to get ahead with them, or you need something from them, then that's flattery, and that's bad. We shouldn't be buttering people up. We shouldn't be saying things to people just to stay in their good graces. We shouldn't be like gathering our little team and trashing everybody who's kind of in the out crowd and sort of flattering everybody who's in the in crowd. Like, isn't it cool that us and our friends, we get it. We're not like them out there that get it, that don't get it. So don't slander, don't complain, don't flatter. And finally, before we get to lying, don't self-exalt. Self-exaltation is another destructive thing we do with our tongues, also known as bragging. Let another praise you and not your own mouth, Proverbs 27 says. Now, most of us are a little smarter than to be what you think of when you think of a braggart. Like, most of us are not schoolyard braggarts. Hey, I can, climb the monkey bars faster, because we probably did that at some point in our life, and then people made fun of us and said, actually, you fell off the monkey bars, and we felt bad about it, and so we learned to sort of disguise our self-exaltation a little bit better. And so what do? Well, we curate the narrative. We sort of pad our resume and conversations. We exaggerate our struggle. We give our prayer requests, oh, I've had such a hard week, and we make it sound like everything's very difficult and we're struggling very hard. And maybe that's true, but maybe also you're exaggerating it a little bit because you want to make yourself look good. There are people who, tell just enough truth to look like the victim in any story, right? There are people who spend their whole lives doing this kind of thing, actually. They construct every narrative, like their entire self-mythology is one of how they were the victim and how everything went wrong because someone did them dirty, but they've struggled through, it's actually all just them exalting themselves. And oftentimes people like that don't even really know that they're doing it, because everything that they're saying is technically true, probably, but you can construct a narrative out of different pieces of what's technically true without actually getting to the truth. And so we have to be very careful about the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. Okay, so those are ways that we lie and kind of ways that we destroy with our tongue. Now let's talk more broadly about lying. Proverbs 12:22 says, "Lying lips are an abomination to the Lord." Lies are bad. You might be confused about that because in our culture, lies are good. I mean, that's not really true, I guess, but in the year 2025, the truth is pretty cheap, right? I mean, you think about what just happened. I have no opinion. I actually, not just for the purposes of preaching, but I actually don't have any opinion on this one way or another. But you think about the Epstein thing that just came out, where now they're saying there isn't a list, and there never was a list. And a couple weeks ago, they were saying, we got to finally show that list. And it's like, who's telling what, and when was it true, and was it true then? And if it was true then what about now, and who do I trust? And then I go to the newspaper, and the headline says one thing, and the body says something else, and then they get the fact checkers, and then the fact checkers have their own agenda, and Trump's hair isn't real, and you just get to the place where you don't know what's true, because everybody just kind of holds it cheaply, right? We just accept, like, well, if you're a politician, obviously, if you're a celebrity, obviously, you're going to say one thing over here. That's just the game, right? And I think to some extent, there's a reason this is one of the 10 Commandments. Everyone's always tempted to lie, and, you can go to any era and find people saying, yeah, politicians, they always lie. But we do live in a time, I think, when the truth is a little cheaper than maybe some other times. But lying, nonetheless, is bad, right? Lying is the most obvious form of bearing false witness of what we're talking about, and lies contradict God's very nature. Jesus says in John 14, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Jesus actually self-identifies as the truth. He says, like, hey, I'm the embodiment of the truth. And who is identified with lies? Any guesses? Satan! John 8:44, Satan is called the father of lies. So Jesus says, I am the truth. Jesus says, Satan is a liar. So that ought to tell you something about how God feels about the truth and about lies. God is truth. And so everybody that came today, we all know that, and we've heard that before. We've certainly heard that lying's bad. We know we're not supposed to lie. And yet, are there ways that we are all tempted to lie? Different ways that we're all tempted to lie? I mean, we already covered some of them. We're tempted to brag in ways that aren't true. We're tempted to gossip, make other people look bad in ways that aren't true. But there's lots of ways that we lie, right? We lie to keep the peace, to keep a relation. Yeah, I'd love to help you, but I got to take my kid for ice cream today. I promised to take my kid for ice cream, so I can't help you, but I'd love to. We lie by overcommitting. Yes, I actually would love to do that, and then you don't do it. We lie through, spiritual pretense. Yes, I'll pray for you, dear brother. And then you don't write their name down. You don't think to pray for them. I've been guilty of this before. I'm in a conversation. I want to be spiritual. I'll pray for you. And then it becomes a lie, maybe not even intentionally, but it's like, I don't do it. We lie to appear strong, to appear holy. We lie about our sin and struggle. It's like the old, how does a Midwestern person say, I'm dying and I'm drowning in despair and everything's terrible and I want to die? 2 words. I'm fine. How you doing? I'm fine. We lie through our persona, our online persona, or the way that we present ourselves at church. We dress up. We want to look like a good Christian, right? We lie by hiding our faith. I've worked jobs in my life where I didn't say that I was a Christian until it was way too late, and people didn't know, and they just took me for another pagan because I wanted to fit in. Maybe some of you have done that sort of thing. We lie about forgiveness. No hard feelings, bro. I forgive you. It's fine. Let's not talk about it. Because I don't actually want to deal with it. Because I don't actually want to forgive you. Because I don't actually want to, We lie by lying about God. We twist theology. God just wants me to be happy, so I guess I'll do the thing that I want. That's my theology. We lie to ourselves. I'm not bitter. I'm not angry. I asked my wife as I was preparing this sermon, like, how do I lie, honey? And it didn't take her very long to think of the answer, weirdly. It came right back. She said, you lie about God. I was like, oh, how do I do that? And she's like, because you give in to despair. You lie to me and the kids all the time because you're just laying around depressed and acting like God's not going to show up for you this time, even though he always does. I'm like, okay, well, thanks for telling me the truth about that. We lie to our children by withholding truth that they need, by withholding encouragement that they should have. Like they should know they're doing a good job, that God is working in them, but you're too lazy or too depressed or too narcissistic to just tell them. You rob your kids because you're too tired, right? We lie by omission. We don't speak the truth when we should. We don't stand up for the truth when we should. We see a lie going down, someone else telling a lie at work, in the family, whatever. We don't stop it. I think maybe no one in the room is like this, but I've certainly known people who just lie because they like to lie. Let's remember with these commandments, we are pretty sinful, and sometimes we just like to break the commandments, there's the kind of person that murders somebody to like get the money, but then there is the kind of very depraved person who just murders to murder. And there's certainly the kind of person who just lies to lie, just enjoys the thrill of telling a lie. You ask them, like, hey, did you wear a blue shirt yesterday? They'll say, no, red, even though they did wear a blue shirt. That exists. That exists in a lot of young people, a lot of kids. It's just fun to lie. We lie all the time, in all different ways. To ourselves, to other people. Hopefully, mostly not knowing we're doing it, not actually thinking, all right, I'm going to tell a lie now. But we're all always tempted to lie. And so, what do we do about that? Well, that's why we need Jesus. That's why we need to give ourselves to He who called himself, who self-identified as the truth. And it's why we need to dedicate ourselves to the truth. We need to say, the truth is important to me. I love the truth. I want to be truthful. I'm examining myself, asking myself, am I being truthful about myself, about my sins, about my struggles? Am I talking to my family about the things I need to talk to them about? Am I telling the truth? I don't have a magic formula for you today, but I think we just have to sort of realize that it's a sin we're all tempted by. We have to pray about it, give ourselves to Christ, and ask for His help, right? Now, what about when it's difficult to tell the truth? I want to talk about this for a little bit, because there's a whole other category of lies that we're tempted to tell. And it's where it feels like telling the truth would actually be really destructive. It would actually lead to something really bad. Whereas lying would lead to something good. So the most extreme example of this would be the Nazis are knocking on your door. They want to know if you're hiding Jews in the attic. Should you lie? The old ethical dilemma. Anybody ever argued about this one? Would God allow us to lie if a genocidal regime was going to kill somebody if I didn't lie? Can I tell a lie then? Okay, well, most of us hopefully will never find ourselves in that situation. But there's real situations where it's to tell the truth will bring destruction, right? If I actually answer my boss when he asks, what do I think about this new policy? I might lose my job, or I might lose my standing with him. If I told my friend or my family member what I am actually thinking, they're not ready to hear it. It might destroy the relationship, right? The truth would be hurtful. The truth isn't what they want to hear. The truth could genuinely damage or block or stop something good from happening. Or maybe it's even just one of those silly things where you're tempted to tell a little white lie. You know, your wife has new jeans, and she's like, do these make my butt look big? And you're like, well, I can tell the truth and spend the night on the couch, or I can tell a little white lie. And I've heard Christians argue, well, actually, here are the reasons why you should lie in that situation. But we must be, of course, utterly dedicated to the truth as Christians. God is the truth. We are to put a high premium on the truth, right? So what do we do? How do we navigate difficult truth-telling? Well, let me give us a few principles for navigating when it's difficult to tell the truth, or even destructive to tell the truth. Number one, our words should bring life. Our words should bring life. And so, if you disagree with me, that's okay. But I would lie to the Nazis. And I think there's plenty of biblical precedent for doing this. We can think of stories like Rahab, the harlot, lying to the soldiers that are searching for the spies in Jericho. We can think of the midwives in Exodus 1, if you know that story. We can think of David pretending to be insane when he was hanging out with the Philistine king. There are actually situations where, like, in the unlikely scenario that you find yourself actually harboring fugitives from like a homicidal, genocidal regime, then maybe you could lie. But that being said, has anyone here harbored fugitives from a genocidal regime anytime recently? Anybody? I'm not seeing a single hand. The Democrats aren't even back in power till 2028 at the earliest, right? So we can't use that. So, okay, fine. If I give you, you could lie, and maybe some of you disagree with me, and that's fine. But if I give you that, what does it get you? You know? Because we can't use that as an excuse for, well, I would lie to the Nazis, and so I can lie to my wife about those jeans. You know, that doesn't work, right? So we need some more principles. But I think it's helpful to start with, like, our words should give life, right? So, principle number 2 for navigating difficult truth-telling. Tell the truth early. Tell the truth often. Many times, the reason you find yourselves in these difficult situations where it might be so destructive to tell the truth is because you told a series of lies that were smaller to get there. So, like, you're hanging out with your best friend, Craigley, and Craigley starts to hum, and he's like, I'm a pretty good hummer, right? And he's like, terrible, he's off tune. And you're like, yeah, that's great. And then Craigley starts to pursue his musical career and practice music, and you're like thinking the whole time, this guy is not good at it, but you keep lying and lying. And then 10 years down the road, Craigley has rented out the Met, and he's going to debut his opera performance, and you know everybody's going to laugh him off the stage. But you're like, if I tell him the truth now, there's 10 years of lies. He's going to be mad. That might be the end of the relationship. That could be really destructive. I was like, well, yes, it could. You might lose your relationship with Craigley now, but that is because a series of lies that you told compounded, right? You should have actually told him the truth 10 years ago, and maybe he would have been hurt. Maybe you guys would have missed like a day of friendship or something. Now, that's a silly example, but we have these kinds of situations in our lives. I alluded earlier to the job that I worked where I never quite found the courage to tell anyone I was a Christian. And I went for years not telling anyone that I was a Christian. They invited me to parties. People were smoking weed at those parties, and I just kind of signed, by not saying anything, just signed off on all kinds of things. And everybody just thought I was their cool pagan friend. And then eventually somebody found something on the internet that outed me as a Christian, and a pretty conservative one at that. And it spread through the office. And then I lost a lot of relationships. It was really destructive. It was really embarrassing. It was really a stupid situation. And it really could have been a much better situation if just like 5 years ago I'd come in and been like, hey, I'm a Christian. Don't invite me to this. So tell the truth early. Don't let your lies snowball. Have just a basic honesty policy that can really help you. Okay, number 3, principle for when it's difficult to tell the truth. Use discretion. Proverbs 12:23 says, "A prudent man conceals knowledge, but the heart of fools proclaims folly." We don't have to say everything that's on our minds. There's no biblical principle of honesty that says you must say everything you're thinking. It is often wise to not say everything that you're thinking. And certainly, there's no special prize in the Christian walk for bluntness, for unkindness, for just having kind of verbal diarrhea, just saying everything. And I think oftentimes Christians, especially it's kind of a young man thing, you repent of like the culture that doesn't hold truth as very important. And you're like, I'm going to be honest. And then you go around and you're just honest all the time in the most obnoxious way possible. Yeah, those jeans do make your butt look big, and it's like, no. Be nice. Just be nice. And you don't always have to say everything. There is a time to not march into your job and say, the new HR policy about LGBT thing is something that I, as a Christian, stand against. And I'm setting myself on fire, and I'm losing my job today. There are places to be wise, to be discreet. There are also places where God is calling you to tell a difficult truth about something like that, and if you don't, you're sinning. Sorting that out is difficult. It requires wisdom. Talk to a pastor, talk to one of us, talk to somebody. We can help you navigate those things. We can help each other navigate those things. I need help navigating those things. But there's no special prize for always being as absolutely honest as possible in the dumbest way possible, right? Number 4, way to navigate difficult truth-telling. Be creative. Be creative. Oftentimes, the reason that we resort to a lie is because it's convenient and we just haven't taken the time to think of a good, kind Christian way to tell the truth, right? Oftentimes, if you just think about it, and I understand sometimes you get put on the spot, whatever, but oftentimes, if you give it a little thought, you can think about like, well, there's a way to tell the truth that's actually going to go down better, right? If your wife asks you if these jeans make my butt look big, the correct response is, yes, they do. Yes, they do. Yes, please. Right? In other ways, there's a way to reframe the entire question. Like, yes, the thing that you're afraid of is true, I guess, technically, but also, I'm still attracted to you, and I should still be attracted to you, and this is, that's a silly example maybe, but not really. Because I think the truth is you can find a good way oftentimes to tell the truth. Don't accept the frame, Change, don't like what they're saying, change the conversation, right? And there are silly ways, people will people will say when you have to critique someone, do a compliment sandwich. Say a compliment, then say a critique, and then say another compliment. Well, hey, that's better than nothing. Sometimes people see that coming, right? Like well, honey, you're always so great at making dinner. All right, what's wrong with the pasta? That one's a little corny, but it's still better than just launching into the critique of the pasta. And you can, I have literally gone to ChatGTP, one of those chatbots, and typed in like, I have to tell this truth to this person. Give me a way to do it that's like, that they'll like, So give it some thought. Be creative, okay? Last way to navigate difficult truth-telling. Create cultures of love and trust wherever you can, wherever possible. Have so much love and trust flowing that if you have a critique, if you have a difficult truth, if you have something hard you have to talk about, there's already a happy context for it, right? Your family, your friend groups, This church can either be built on, performance and pretense, or it can be built on love and truth and trust. And if we have a culture where we actually really trust each other, where we actually, where like if I do say to my wife, like, I don't like this soup, she understands I love her. She understands I love her cooking. She understands it's great being married. It's great eating dinner. We've already done all that work. And sometimes when you have a difficult thing to say to somebody, one of the reasons that it is difficult is because you haven't actually done the work of just loving that person, of just creating that context, right? Oftentimes in our families, when things get ragged and we find that we can't actually have the difficult conversations and say the difficult truths, it's because we're not just hanging out and enjoying each other and doing the things that we need to do to experience love and kindness, right? So we must as a church, and we must as families, and we must as individuals be creating cultures of love. A culture of love is a culture where naturally you can talk about the truth, right? The reason you're scared to tell the truth at your workplace or wherever it is that you're scared of the truth is because there isn't any love. There's not that foundation that's been built. But there are places, many places, where we have some control over the foundation. And so we have to build it. So those are some principles to navigate difficult truth-telling. But we must be committed to the truth. And we've spent so much time talking about lying that, we do a whole nother sermon on just giving ourselves to the truth, right? We don't have time to talk about that. But I do just want to say again, we need to develop as Christians a love for the truth. A love for the truth. And I think the number one way of doing that is developing, as we always should be, a love for Jesus Christ, who is the truth. The more we give ourselves to loving Jesus, learning about Jesus, knowing the real Jesus, even in the places where, if we're being honest, we're tempted not to like the real Jesus, that's how we fall in love with the truth all over again, right? We need to love Jesus. We need to love our need for Jesus. Not love our sin, but love, like when someone comes to you and says, yeah, you messed up again, and you realize, oh, yeah, I forgot. I need Jesus. Like that should be a sweet thing to you. Not because you stink, but because Jesus is that great. And so let's give ourselves to Jesus Christ again. Let's just dedicate ourselves to the simple work of loving and obeying Jesus, because that is how we will have lives that are just filled with the truth. And that is what we need to do. Let's pray. Father God, we thank you for your mercy. We thank you for your kindness to us. We thank you that you are a God of truth, that the truth sets us free, as your word says, that Jesus Christ is the truth, and that he came to destroy the liar and destroy the lies in our hearts. I pray that you would give every one of us an eye for the truth, a hatred of lies, a hatred of gossip and slander, and all the kinds of malicious ways that we hurt each other with our words. I pray that our speech to each other and to the world would be seasoned with salt this week, and that each one of us would find new ways to be your salt in your life and your truth to this dying world. We thank you for Jesus. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen.